So a lot of the confusion with personality disorders is because I think that we conceptualize personality disorders incorrectly. A lot of us didn't get a lot of training on personality disorders, adaptive personality components, maladaptive personality components. So what happens over time is that we hold this belief that personality is a linear construct. It's like an M&M. In reality, is that if personality was a linear construct, you would buy and eat M&Ms only because of the candy shell. That's it. You'd be like, well, I only like the red ones, and that's it. You wouldn't eat it for the chocolate. You wouldn't eat it for the peanut. You wouldn't eat it for the almond. You wouldn't eat it for the jalapeno. You wouldn't eat it for the toffee. You wouldn't eat, I don't know. I saw there was a coffee one the other day. I love M&Ms. M&Ms and donuts are kind of, well, ice cream too. I like sweets, chocolate. Anyway, a little something about me. But we don't buy M&Ms for the candy shell. We buy it for what's inside. And we have to step beyond the linear construct of personality and see that it is a dual construct. That dual construct tells us that there are two components to personality. This is part of why working with individuals with personality disorder is so difficult, because we see it as that candy shell. And if all we're treating is the candy shell, all we're treating is what I call surface content. Surface content surface content is depression, anxiety, could be PTSD symptoms, could be panic attacks, could be anger, rage, whatever it may be. But grandiosity, since we're talking about narcissism, vulnerability is likely also to be surface content. But what we need to get to in order to affect change in our clients is get to the core structure, the core content. And those are the driving factors. Those driving factors, typically, classically, for individuals along narcissistic spectrum, that would be fear, doubt, shame, inferiority, and guilt. Those are kind of the five, and you're going to see those again in a little bit. But it's those things, having that core sense of self, those fears, that insecurity, that inferiority, that shame, guilt, doubt, drives these maladaptive components. Now, if they dealt with them adaptively, then they wouldn't develop this affectation, this outward presentation of narcissistic personality disorder, narcissistic traits. But we have to get to the core. And tonight, that's exactly what we're talking about. But I want to challenge you to think differently. As soon as you read this about Peter, right, the email that I got, and you learn more about him, instead of thinking, okay, well, what are his symptoms? What is going on? I want you to ask yourself, what are the themes that are going on in his life? Why did he lose a job? He lost a job because he's smarter than everybody else, and he cannot tolerate any ambiguity. Because the issue is with ambiguity is that ambiguity means he's not in control of the situation. If he's not in control of the situation, he may be found out that he's really maybe not that smart. He may be found out that maybe he's not that great. Maybe he's not that attractive. Maybe he's not that funny. And if any of these are true, he's broken, worthless, and all those components with my clients, I call it family in the head. I got that from Lorna Smith Benjamin. She's a wonderful researcher. She specializes in personality disorders. And so for family in the head, so for Peter's family in the head, it's all of this chorus of doubt, shame, fear, inferiority. And if all we focus on, okay, what can we do to help Peter keep his job? It's really unlikely that he's going to relate to you very well. It's really unlikely that he's going to connect to you, because if all you're dealing with is the issues at work, even though that was, or his issues with his wife, as well as his stupid boss. And he, by the way, he doesn't like the boss because his boss had a PhD in engineering and Peter had a bachelor's in engineering. And so Peter was always trying to keep up. It was very anxiety provoking for him. So he's always like, this guy has a PhD. He should know better. he should know this, this, this. It's all of these grandiose expectations because this person has a PhD, which then shows how stupid his boss is, because if he has a PhD, he should know better. If he has a PhD, then he should know what Peter needs so Peter doesn't have to ask for it. You know, well, just because you have a PhD doesn't necessarily mean you're a mind reader, or it doesn't mean you're a mind reader, not necessarily, but it doesn't. So again, in working with Peter, right, we see these surface structure issues. We see the anxiety, we see the fear, we see the inferiority, all of these issues. Now, you're not going to say to Peter, you know, you seem really afraid of being yourself. Yeah, you wouldn't do that. Well, first of all, you're going to cause a narcissistic wound. If you cause a narcissistic wound, that's only going to be managed in one of two ways. That is, it goes internal, which is a lot of, again, you're going to ignite a lot of that fear, shame, doubt, inferiority, which could then result in depression, which then increases the probability of self-harm or suicide attempt or completed suicide, because the individual has to eradicate the object that has caused that narcissistic wound. And that doesn't mean that he's going to kill his boss, most likely, probably not, but he has to eradicate that. So then if it goes external, that's where you see the narcissistic rage. That's where you see the tantrums. That's where you see acting out. That's where you see shaming of others. Because if they've incurred that narcissistic wound, it's almost this violent verbiage that just comes out. So that's what you would incur if you would say to him, well, I mean, you know, it's a normal. A lot of people are, because you know, you're just trying to exercise empathy, right? And you're just saying, you know, a lot of people feel unsafe or uncertain around their boss, especially if they have more education. Eek. You know, that would be bad. That'd be a narcissistic wound. And Peter would interpret that you're saying that he's stupid. And now he has to then denigrate you, criticize you to make you feel small so he can restore his sense of self, right? So he can restore that level of narcissism and overcome that narcissistic wound that was incurred by your statement. And if all of this sounds confusing, because working with these folks is really challenging, we're going to talk about how to get around it. We're going to talk about how to talk to Peter too. But I think this is so important because we have to get to the core content. But on the way to core content, we're going to encounter defense mechanisms. We're going to encounter them. Core content is well defended. Surface structure isn't, because it's on the surface. I mean, what's there to defend? Here it is. But it's the core content that is well protected.